Calaroga Shark Media.
From the hockey capital of the world, the United States of America, I'm Johnny Mac. Joining us from Canada is Mike Chisholm, host of the Letterman Podcast. Mike, anything new? What's going on?
I can't dispute what you just said. Congratulations to the American Olympic hockey teams, both the men and the women's for that matter. One of the greatest games of all time that I've ever. Wow, what a game that was yesterday. I'm doing good. All things considered, considering my boys, we thought that we were going to get gold, but ran into a hot goalie, and it turns out an American team had so much heart. I was astounded at the heart that the U.S. hockey team had. Congratulations, the hockey capital of the world. We'll have to accept that until the World Cup, at least. But other than that, I'm doing very, very well. It's good to see you. I would like, if possible, for you to compare to me, someone who lives on the West Coast. Whenever we hear of something called a nor'easter over the years, we have seen various effects, especially in my view, Letterman having his show either audience free or postponed because of it. Compare this nor'easter that you guys are going through to ones of the past.
Sure. So much to unpack there. First of all, I want to point out the difference between Americans and Canadians. I went out of my way to get my USA jersey for those of you listening on audio. You don't see it, but Mike does. So I have my USA jersey on, which of course I wear every day. And, you know, I come on here to razz you, and you just are very gracious and congratulate the winners. So there's that. As for the nor'easters, that is a term I never heard until the mid-90s when I worked at WR Radio in New York, and then all of a sudden there was a nor'easter. It just seems to be one of those things that, like a derecho, like I never heard of derecho until like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. This one, we probably got I'm a little inland. Maybe the coast was harder hit as we record on Monday morning. Inland, we got kind of the same amount of snow a month ago. People were talking about the equivalent of Category 2 hurricane winds. I saw one tweet about 20-foot waves off the coast of Long Island. So maybe a little further east, it's bad, but here up in the hills, it's just another winter snowstorm, a big one. It was up to my knees, but you know, I'm sure others also get snow. It's not the biggest deal in the world.
Okay, but a snow day for the kids. Kids are staying home today.
Yeah, all the schools are closed. In New York City, the mayor didn't even make them do virtual. He gave them an old-fashioned snow day.
Nice.
But, you know, you're not going anywhere. You got to dig your cars out, and there are safety restrictions in place. You're not supposed to go anywhere. There's nowhere to go, even if you get out. So it's just kind of, it's a snow day. Good
excuse to get some more podcasting done.
Exactly. So I want to ask you about hockey, aside from razzing you.
Yes, sir.
So stereotypes aside, how big a deal was that game? Is the nation watching? Are you guys crushed, or you know what's the feeling there?
I have friends who are certainly crushed, who I spoke to throughout the day yesterday, that were, you know, their whole day was well, and it's because of the way this day started. So I'm on the West Coast, so the game was 5 a.m. And I mean, we had restaurants that were open, ticketed events, things like that were, so there was activity definitely happening at 5 a.m. I got up and just watched it in my house, and then was, you know, through social media, you know, and text messages going back and forth through friends. This is a gigantic thing up here. I'll rewind it back to 2010. When we hosted, now that at that time the Olympics were in Vancouver, but the gold medal game, the men's hockey gold medal game, Sidney Crosby, what's known in Canada up here as the golden goal, just, you know, pandemonium, and I'm certain that would have happened yesterday as well, but you know, it didn't go that way. And so you had a lot of people. I went to get my wife a coffee at around 8 a.m, and driving by the Starbucks, there was a long, sullen line going through that drive-through. There were a lot of people at 8 a.m. that were punched in the gut, and it was a big deal. But I mean, at the end of the day, most people that I know, when you look at how the Americans finished And it was an unbelievable Johnny Gaudreau. I don't know if you're how big of a hockey fan you are, but Johnny Gaudreau, who had played for the Calgary Flames, Johnny Hockey, we loved him up here. That's the thing about Canadians is that when an American comes up here, I think of the Toronto Maple Leafs, captained by Austin Matthews, unbelievable talent. When an American comes up here and plays for one of our teams, typically they're very, very embraced. And Johnny Hockey was certainly that. When the game ended, before the team picture was taken on the ice, players went and got Johnny Gaudreau, who tragically passed away far too soon. They went and grabbed his jersey, brought it out, and then his two kids, one of whom had I believe it was his first birthday for Johnny Jr. yesterday, and so they brought them on the ice to have the picture taken with them. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, the hockey gods are at play here. The Canadians played the best possible game we could play, and it was ours to lose. I mean, the chances. So I think most of my hockey loving friends all kind of accept that as it was our game to lose, and we the Americans were so resilient. And so it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing up here. But at the same time, all it does is build fire for the World Cup, and we're already talking about that. So I think we had the perfect team. I don't think there's going to be any second guessing. I think that it was just one of those things where we ran into a hot goalie and a team that was leading with their heart, and absolutely the heart won that day. So that's the way I see it.
I don't want to make it sound like it's nothing down here. Going into the game, it was a big deal. The famous 1980 Olympic hockey team and the movie Miracle, that comes up in popular culture all the time. You might go maybe 3 weeks and somebody will bring up that game. So it's not like it's bigger than if, say, America made a run in the World Cup. And that might be different with the World Cup being in the three countries this year.
Yep.
But, if the Americans had made a run in the World Cup 4 years ago, I still think the hockey is a bigger deal because 1980 always gets dusted off. And now we've got new folk heroes, and Jack Hughes losing a couple teeth and getting back out there and happening to be the one scoring the goal. I mean, that's movie stuff, right?
Oh yeah. It was like I said, the hockey gods were at play. And I love that. I love the drama of sport and sometimes the things that come out of it. And I mean, it's funny. I remember people were talking about our first two games to get to the gold medal game. And, they're come from behind, overtime, for the one game. And people were scared and like, oh no, Canada's not dominating. And I just look at them and go, it doesn't matter if Canada just dominates. You can't have that. You have to have the chase. You have to have the drama. You have to have the back and forth. I don't want us to be a dominant. I want us to win. Of course, it's our game, but man, it's got to have, like, I think about the Canada Cup, 87, Gretzky Lemieux on the same team and playing the Soviets. It just, I mean, and again, you go back to the Miracle on Ice, again, playing the Soviets. Isn't it fun that we have gotten a chance to see the Soviets kind of rise and fall, and now it's Canada and the U.S. that are those two dominant teams, and you got your European teams that are trying to crack into that, and I love the hockey culture when it comes to that. I thought the Olympics were wonderful this year, and seeing the Americans take it, both in the men and the women, was a sight to be seen, and again, tip of the cap. Back in 2010. It's one of my favorite Letterman clips, and it's not available anymore. I remembered it because it was such a wonderful night. The night after the golden goal. So the golden goal was scored on a Sunday, Olympics end. And then Monday night, you go and watch Letterman, and he did a desk piece after the monologue. And he sat down, and he said, hey, everybody watch the hockey game, and everyone cheering and all that sort of stuff. And he kind of leans into the camera and he goes, I was watching the game, and as it's going, he looks into the camera and he goes, I wanted the Canadians to win. And I just really appreciated that because, we're on our home ice and all that. And it was just the fervor was unbelievable. And I appreciated that. And I could appreciate the sentiment, especially like I say, once I saw the US win yesterday. So, but yeah, it was it's been a pretty crazy week, John. I've had a pretty bonkers week this week.
Well, we'll get to that just before we do. I have a note here. The president asked me to remind you. we do have an offer for you to join the United States of America. Now, stay with me.
Uh-huh.
That would solve your problem because you would then be part of the greatest hockey playing nation in the world. You would be winners. And to be fair, you would immediately have the best state flag. I mean, that would easily be of the 51, the best state flag. So you guys might want to consider our offer and join us. And then you could say things like, we haven't won the Stanley Cup since 2025. We are gold medal winners in the Olympics. And it would solve a lot of your problems. So just consider that.
All right. Well, it's something to go workshop, and I think we'll get the team on it to see if they can iron out a potential thing there. But Dave certainly talked about that when he saw us when we saw him in Vancouver. All right, but we'll get to that.
Let's get to the reason we are together today. They say don't meet your heroes, and you made your way over to Vancouver, and there was one David Letterman, and you met him because I know that because I saw a picture of you and David Letterman. What happened? How did that go? Was he a jerk? Was he like, you have a podcast about me, loser, or was he super cool? Tell us about David Letterman in real life.
It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I'll talk about the don't meet your heroes thing. It was cool. It was one of those world colliding kind of moments. I love when worlds collide, like when the things that I'm interested in kind of mix up with each other. This one here is a little bit more nostalgic, perhaps. I used to go to Vancouver. So I live in a place called Kelowna. Kelowna is about 4 hours east of a drive and a mountain range. You got to drive over a mountain range to get to Vancouver. Since I was a child, I would go to Vancouver to go see concerts because every major act for the most part would come through Vancouver. Vancouver's an amazing city. And most artists who do come through are just struck by its beauty right away because it's surrounded by mountains and water. And it's just this beautiful place. And I would go to see my favorite bands play. And there's a couple venues in particular that I would go see them play. And I would go and hang out by the stage door so I could meet some of my favorite acts as they would either arrive or, sometimes I would go see the sound checks, and that was fun. But I remember when I was maybe 19 or 20, I think I was going down to see Faith No More. And there was a bunch of us at the stage door behind the Commodore Ballroom. And I met this old guy, and then he was an old guy. He was probably about 45. Okay. But I was 19. And to me, that was an old guy. Ouch. And there was a bunch of these kids who were waiting to meet Faith No More. And there was this old guy that was there as well. And I mean, he started telling us stories. There's a lot of downtime when you do this. And he started telling us these stories. He was telling us a story about when U2 showed up when in 79. And he met them when they were going up before they went up for their show, and different bands that he met. And he gave me a piece of advice that I'm forever grateful for. And it was exactly what you're talking about. Don't meet your heroes. Well, no, he said, meet your heroes. Just make sure you have zero expectation whatsoever when you meet them. Just zero. Because what if you meet them on a bad day? What if you meet them after they just had a fight with their wife or their husband or whatever? What if you just met them after, something major happening? They're also probably jet lagged. They're also waiting to do a show. They're in a different spot. And if they're your hero, chances are, this part here I've kind of refined over the years. This part here, if they've got notoriety, chances are they get a bit of a stressful life. And they may be able to make time, they may not, but either way, just enjoy the experience because you just got something that most of the people that are going to be in there watching that show that night didn't get. And so I carried that with me. Now with Dave, those kid gloves have an extra kid glove on top of each of them because he's known. He's got this personality that is unique. I think misunderstood personally. People call it, like Cher famously, called him an a-hole on national television. But I don't think it's so much that. I just think it's just a different, unique personality. And when you have somebody with that much talent, guess what? They may have some quirks in their personality, but that being said, those of us who were there and met him that day, not even a week ago, we all knew the score. There were no autograph hounds out there other than us who just would love to get something signed. The small group of people that were there, they were fans of my show, which was very, very interesting. We were all decked out in Letterman stuff. And so I think because of that, he decided to stop and take some time and spend it with us. It was a fantastic experience. He had a wisecrack for every single one of us who said something to him. Immediately, he had a wisecrack back. which delighted us all. And yeah, it was a very, very positive experience. So that's what we did. We went to the stage door, but it wasn't going to the stage door to see a band that I'm kind of into at the moment. It was to see my childhood hero. And so merging the worlds colliding of those two moments was unbelievable.
That's super awesome. So he was just walking out from the stage to the town car or whatever, and that's it.
The other way. So okay. we show up at the stage door, and we're sitting there talking, and it was cool because I got a chance to get some of my nervous energy, whatever you want to call it, out, because the guys, when I got there, they were like stoked to see me. And so they start asking me all these questions about stuff, about Saffers, about, stuff that I talk about on the Letterman podcast. And they wanted to talk to me about stuff that I don't say on the show. And there are things that are kind of in that little neutral zone of, here's the stuff I say on the show. Here's the stuff that's in the circle of trust for all of these staffers and these people that I know that I would never say out loud. But then there's some of the stuff in the middle here that is probably okay to talk about, but I wouldn't talk about it necessarily on the show. So a lot of that stuff came out.
I want to unpack all that because we're not on any kind of clock, and we can get to Dave. I'm fascinated by, so I've been in media for 30 something years. So I'm a little more used to this than I think you are, of running into Letterman podcast fans. And one of the things I learned in talk radio in the 90s, and I've talked to people, is you mention your cat Fluffy one time, and 7 years later, you run into a fan and they go, "How's Fluffy the cat doing?" And you're like, "How do you know the name of my cat?" And it's because one time at 6:14 in the morning on a blizzard Monday, you mentioned Fluffy the cat, and your fans create these parasocial relationships with you. And they think they know you. So they know Mike from the Letterman podcast, who I assume is a shade of the real person. Just like I often talk about how Johnny Mac is an exaggerated version of John. It's all real. I don't like Adam Sandler comedies, but I don't rant and rave about Adam Sandler comedies, being an example of that. So I find that really interesting. You also alluded to, and I've tried to explain this to folks over the years, the people who get access don't talk about it. It's kind of like the people who are actually getting laid didn't need to tell you they were. And it's like, you can just go about your business and have stories. And then because you know how to roll, people trust you. Like I've talked about, sidebar. So this is the thing I find in my own life, that if I just talk about my own life, I wind up name dropping, and I'm not trying to show off. I'm just talking about my life. My wife and I went on a long drive on Friday, and we were listening to Bruno Mars. And factually, I have met Bruno Mars, and he was very cool. And we just talked about that. And I was just reflecting on my own life, that I've been fortunate and I've been able to do things. I met Bruno Mars. I met him for 2 minutes once, and he was super cool. But I've met Bruno Mars, and most people haven't met Bruno Mars. And you just alluded to that.
Yes.
So in my own life, the example I usually use is I worked with Steven Van Zandt from the E Street Band for maybe 5 years before I said the word Springsteen. But then our relationship was, I was just John that produced the show, not Springsteen fan who's going to ask Steven for tickets someday.
Yes.
Maybe by osmosis you pick up that I speak the language or I know what's going on, but I was in the role of, I'm here to produce your show, Mr. Van Zandt. Let's work on this today. Not, oh my God, I've seen you in show and 45 times, and I watch The Sopranos and all that. So your instincts are correct. There are things we talk about. There are the things that we might talk about. There are things that we never talk about, and especially things that are clearly off the clock. So back to the celebrities. If you're David Letterman, you probably just want to walk the 15 feet and get inside and get your head into the show. But here are these people who love you, and you've got to turn it on for a couple minutes, and you have to be there for them because, and we're all human, if Dave or Van Zandt or Bruno Mars has a bad day, that one time you met them, oh, so-and-so was a jerk. I don't like so-and-so, and it can ruin it. So for the celebrity, they've got to be on all the time. Some of them choose not to and don't care. Some of them are really, really good at it. And you'll walk away going, wow, I feel like I'm David Letterman's best friend. He knew so much about me. So
Yep.
I just find that all interesting as you found yourself in those waters with people who listen to you, because we do this, right? And it's like, all right, I'm a guy in I'm a guy in a basement doing a podcast. It's a Letterman podcast. I don't know who actually listens, but people actually listen, and they're fans of yours, and that's all interesting, right?
It was fascinating, and the good news with me is that I'm me, just with the volume turned up, but for the most part, I'm pretty high energy. I'm like, in real life, you meet me, and if you get me excited about something, the enthusiasm just can't help but come out. I've got a boy-like enthusiasm that just pops out. So that part there is super easy. Now, if I had just had a fight with my wife, again, that's the situational part of it, I might not be. But that day, because everybody was sort of on the same page and everybody had the singular focus, we were all little kids. And so they start asking me questions, and most of the questions are like, hey, like let's talk about what's Rupert really like. So I'm like, all right, well, let's get the FaceTime out and let's FaceTime Rupert. And and to them, they're like, oh my God, like their heads exploded. So I didn't need to even really, like, okay, I'll give you an example of what you just said, and something they asked me, and they said, okay, so are they going to record this? Is it going to come out? Is it going to come out? And I said, no. And they said, well, why not? I said, here's the thing. Dave has a show on Netflix. It's called My Next Guest Needs No Introduction. It is, as far as Netflix goes, a very prestigious show for their brand. It's one of their most prestigious shows. Netflix views David Letterman as one of their signature stars, and he is. He absolutely is. And the show has a very distinct flavor over the 7 or 8 years or whatever that they've been doing them. They have really, it's got an identity of its own. And when Dave does something like this at one of the comedy festivals, where he interviews somebody or has a conversation with somebody on stage, it is similar to My Next Guest. And if they were to record that and put it out anywhere, that would diminish the star power or the prestige of the uniqueness of what Dave is to Netflix. And that wouldn't be a good thing, especially when you consider Dave's got a staff and producers and people and a team where their livelihoods depend on that show. And if it gets diminished, well, that's not a good thing for anybody. And so, they completely understood that when I said that. Great. I'm not telling them where I got that information from. I'm not telling them who, if anybody specifically told me that, or so there's an example of sometimes you can let information out without saying necessarily where it came from and how you know and all that sort of stuff. And so I had a few little moments like that. And then there was a couple ones where somebody asked me a question. I'm just like, I don't know, and I can't answer that.
It's also because you are expert in the Letterman verse, you just know stuff by osmosis, or you just pick up on things.
Mm-hmm.
No one has told me anything that you said. No one has told me anything about a Netflix deal or whatever, but it makes total sense. Netflix has a comedy festival. JFL is a different comedy festival.
Yes.
Of course, they don't want Dave to step on the Netflix brand with something really similar. That all makes sense, but I have no inside information there.
There you go.
But just top of mind, because we're on this corner, I'm picking up that Stephen Colbert keeps going out of his way to say he thanks CBS for the 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep noticing he keeps phrasing it a certain way. And my spidey sense is just going, that seems deliberate. And I don't know why, but it seems deliberate. No one has told me that, but I've just been doing this long enough and I notice things.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I'm grateful for the 11 years that I've had on CBS or something like that. Yeah, he's very, and I mean, I would think that, like, what a unique way for his show. It's going to be interesting to look back, 5 years from now, to look back on this time and how Colbert's show ends. I mean, you think about how Conan ended his Tonight Show run. You think about how, and then his TBS run, for that matter. You think about how Dave, of course, left CBS, and it's just going to be interesting to see what Stephen does after this, and reading the tea leaves that you're reading right now, how the tea actually tastes on the other side when it's served to us. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how that goes. But with all of the polarization that's happening, Dave sure got out when he did at the right time, because I look at the reaction he got in Vancouver, and I mean, the guy's an icon, and Colbert will be an icon as well. We're just going to see how that shapes out. But yeah, I when you talk about seeing things that are going on, that's exactly right. And sometimes it is common sense, but sometimes you also have things confirmed that with a little bit more specificity. So
more with Mike Chisholm from the Letterman Podcast after this. All right, so I love talking to you. We're a half hour in. The topic is you met David Letterman, and so far, a half hour in, we've gotten as far as you're standing there and David Letterman's about to get out of a car. That's as far as we've gotten into this story half an hour in.
Yeah, it's so what happened was the stage door for the Queen Elizabeth Theater. The Queen Elizabeth Theater is a beautiful, beautiful theater. You know, and it's about almost 3,000 people, and you know, Dave did 30 seconds on named after Queen Elizabeth, after her legendary run of whatever it was in the 70s, and that's why the theater was named after her. And it was just, you know, he made an amazing Stanley Park joke. Just such a wonderful, wonderful night that was completely curated for the audience that was in attendance. But the Queen Elizabeth Theater has a main entrance, and then there's a stage door. We were by the stage door, and what happened was it was actually Dave's entourage, and the entourage is two people, his assistant and his guy. They showed up, and they showed up in front of Dave. I was around the corner, so the other 4 fans, 2 of them of our show, or 3 of them actually of our show, were there, and I was around the corner.
Wait, is Dave a limo guy or a town car guy?
No, it was a white Tahoe. It wasn't a black Tahoe or anything like that. Zach came in a black one. Dave came in a white one, but shows up and it parks. Pardon me?
That alone is interesting to me, because I have this whole story, I won't tell it right now, of booking a white limousine for Jamie Foxx at the Super Bowl one time, and he wouldn't ride in a white limousine. The short version of this story is white limos are for proms, and we had to pull a black limousine out of our hat, and it was very, very stressful, but it'll take me half an hour to tell that story. All right, so it's a white Tahoe. Dave is okay with all sorts of palettes for his vehicles. That's good to know. All right,
yeah,
I'll stop interrupting.
No, please, anytime. It wasn't even like, it didn't even look like, there was no pomp and circumstance with it whatsoever. It was not, I would even say, nondescript. And so I was around the corner doing something, and one of the guys texted me, "Get here now." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I go back around, and as I'm walking towards, I'm seeing Mary Barkley, who, you know, Dave's right hand. She's on the Barbara Gaines show. Everybody loves Mary. She's awesome. I see her. She is just going into the venue. I think we caught eyes, and I was just kind of like, I'm terrified of Mary. I've said that from the very beginning. Every time I've seen her, been at an event where she's there, I just kind of look at her. I'm like, I'm terrified of you. It's just, I don't know if it's a bit, but I really am terrified of her. She's the gatekeeper. She's, you know, I don't want to piss Mary off ever. I see her. I see Dave starting to talk to the guys, and she goes into the venue. I'm like, okay. And then I see Dave's guy. As I'm walking over, the second or maybe the third of the group that were there had their moment with Dave, and I just kind of sidle up to Dave's guy, and I kind of, you know, let him know that I'm there, and I'm just watching Dave blow these guys' minds, and it was cool because I didn't get starstruck at all. I had a little care package for him that I didn't end up giving to him, but it had like funny things. It had a picture of Bruno Gerussi, who was a beachcomber. I had that. Dave was on Bruno Gerussi's Celebrity Chefs. That was his first television appearance once he became a comedian, and it happened to be in Vancouver. So I had a picture of that. Some Canadian snacks and things like that I would give to him if the opportunity arose. So I'm sitting there just with that patiently. And he finishes with, I guess, the fourth guy. And I just said, Dave, may I please take a selfie? And this is where people said to me, did you tell him who you were? Did he recognize you and all of that? Never in a million years would I identify myself as to who I was. If it happened, great. If he recognized me, great. I know the deal. There's no way I'm going to do that. Dave, I find, wasn't really looking up at each other in the eyes or anything like that because they were late for rehearsal. Dave's other producer, Walter, who runs the Letterman YouTube channel, he'd shown up about 20 minutes earlier, give him a big hug, good to see you. And he's like, I got to get in. I'm late for rehearsal. And we're like, okay, no problem. And Dave didn't show up for another 20 minutes after that. So, they needed to get in there. And so I think Dave just wanted to give us our moment, but he needed to get in there because he had stuff to do. The show was much more complex than anybody ever realized it was going to be. There was a need for a rehearsal and a blocking. There's no question about that. But he did take that time for us. So when he came over to me, the selfie was great. He took us. We made sure it was a good picture, which was I loved that. And then I got him to sign a cue card. I've got David Letterman autographs. There's one cue card in particular that I have that I just love. It's actually a CBS joke. And so he signed it. And as he signed it, I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, we could get him to perform the joke. And I've got it right here. I know it's yours is audio, mine's video though. So this is from, I believe it's 96. It might have been the very first year of Survivor. And this is the first show after the Survivor finale. Welcome. My name's Dave. So Dave comes out. The monologue's about to start. Welcome. My name is Dave, CBS's only true survivor. Which to me, with the benefit of hindsight, is ironic as all get out. Dave's the only guy that called his own shot at CBS. He started when he started and he ended when he ended. Well, Survivor is over. Now 40 million Americans can now get back into the habit of not watching CBS, which to me is funny beyond all measure. There's Dave's signature on the bottom there. By the way, if somebody is ever going to look to get an autograph from one of their favorite celebrities, make sure you test the pen, even if it's a brand new pen. Get it rolling here. Dave made a comment about how crappy of a pen it was. It was brand new, but I hadn't tested it yet. On the back of the card, the head monologue writer at the time, Gabe Abelson, he signed it for me and stuff. So this is a very special piece of cardboard to me. And I said to Dave, Dave, I would love maybe if you could perform the joke. And he goes, if I was any good at performing jokes, I'd still have a show, which again was worth the price of admission right there for me. But I was wearing a Barbara Gaines shirt. And so Dave's guy, as we're going through this, points at my Barbara Gaines shirt and he says, hey, Dave, look, like he tried to give me, and of course, Dave's guy knew who I was. And so he's pointing at my Barbara Gaines shirt. And I appreciate that very, very, very much, because if there was more time or another, slightly different tick of the universal time clock, Dave might have looked at it and it might have created another opportunity to then have that. But he was late for rehearsal. So it was like, no, you got to go. There you go, guys. And we're all just flabbergasted, and it blew our minds. It was an amazing encounter before an even more amazing show. So that was a very, very, very special moment for these guys, especially like most people who love David Letterman don't ever think they're going to have an encounter with David Letterman, and they all did. It was a positive experience. I think you saw the video of all of us afterwards. We were all giddy as schoolboys. It was a phenomenal experience. So yeah, and then the show.
Well, you
actually,
also
no, not this. One other thing happened. But anyways, keep going. Ask that question and I'll tell you the other thing that happened.
You also have a selfie with our good friend, Paul Shaffer.
Okay. So Dave goes in and we're all standing there and we're all letting the moment kind of breathe, but also like, what the hell just happened? And we were just kind of decompressing and we had all this crazy nervous energy that was going out. Like, I think there was a little bit of dancing at one point. It was just lovely. And then another very shiny, you can tell it's kind of a high-end rental, but again, nondescript minivan shows up. And we're all like, all right, let's go meet Zach. And we're just like, okay. And there's maybe 100 feet or 50 feet between where the vehicle stops and the stage door. And we're like, okay. And out pops Paul Shaffer. And all of us just kind of looked at each other and we're like, what? Because he was not advertised for the show. Makes a lot of sense that Paul might be there because they're up here in Canada, but it's West Coast Canada. That ain't where Paul resides.
I don't know if you know, Canada is a big country. It's pretty big. But yeah, I when I saw the selfie, I was like, I don't think they announced Shaffer, and whoa, he's Canadian, so of course he went. But like, like I said, like, I'm not showing up in LA today.
Right? It was a coda and a surprising one, to say the least, for all of us. Completely unexpected, and we're like, okay, so what's better than meeting Dave? Let's meet Dave and Paul. And Paul gets out of the van and he looks and he goes, guys, I'm really late, but I gotta go. I gotta get in there. And we're like, okay. He goes, after. We're like, all right. True to his word, about 40 minutes later, Paul comes out, immediately recognizes me, which I was so stoked about because I've met Paul a few times and he's been on the show and whatnot. So I've met him a few times. So which delighted me to no end. Again, the inner child in me is just alive and well at this point. Gives us all the glad hand and selfies and all that stuff. One of the guys who's a really, really, really old school late night fan asks Paul about a song that he did for a bit called Mr. Humidity. Paul's like, yeah, I think so. I think I kind of remember it. The guy sang it. He goes, yeah, I think I remember it. And that was fun. And we had a good time with him. And he said, okay, I gotta go. He left. And then we messaged like Don Giller to find out about Mr. Humidity, and we found out all the details about that. And he messaged us back and told us about the dates and times and the lyrics of the song. And so that was fun. But yeah, we had no idea Paul was going to be there. Now, I had heard that the original thought was that Marty Short was going to be the guest. And it makes sense. The Canadiana of it all makes sense. And having Paul there and whatnot. Marty Short has now been announced that he is going to be one of two guests that Dave will speak to at the Netflix is a Joke Comedy Festival in May down in LA. So one would think that Paul is, of course, going to be a part of that because he and Marty have this connection and whatnot. So it makes sense if that was the case. I don't know for a fact that it's the case. But I know that there were some people that were scratching their heads before the show as to why Zach Galifianakis was chosen. But during the show, it became very apparent why it was Zach that was on stage with Dave. And I can go into that here. But at the end of the day, seeing Paul there definitely threw us through a loop. But when the show began, all the pieces kind of came together. This was a very, very well curated show. David Letterman is 78 years old. He could have very easily just come out, made a couple very surfacey jokes. Everybody would have been so happy about that. Brought Zach out, had a meaningful conversation with him. He could probably do that on autopilot because he's had him on My Next Guest before, and it was a very, very good episode. I highly recommend it. But that wasn't this. This was a very well put together show and a very well curated show, and having Paul there is a part of that curation.
Where does Paul live these days?
I think New York is where
that's what I thought.
Where he spends most of his time. I think that's where he is most of the time. Yeah.
Just living my life as a New Yorker. I was on 9th Avenue at some point. I don't know, in the last 40 years getting food, and so was Paul Shaffer. But as New Yorkers, that happens, and New Yorkers tend to leave the celebs alone. And, just you notice, oh, yeah, there's Paul Shaffer, you just go about your business. So that's why I thought he was from New York as well.
He plays a lot still. Like he and Will Lee will do gigs down at the bitter end with Oz Noy and different musicians as well. He plays a lot of gigs out there still. And the night I saw him do that a few years ago, Paul's wife, Kathy, was there and all that. And you could tell they came from home. She stayed there for the first show. She went home, and then Paul did the second show as well. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he spends most of his time in New York.
And you also blew my mind. I guess I just don't pay attention that David Letterman is 78, which is kind of sort of almost 80.
Yeah.
Boy, time goes fast because he seems younger, whereas I'm running into clips of The Worst Person Who Ever Lived, Jay Leno, and Jay seems old. Jay all of a sudden got old man. His speaking voice has aged. He looks old. I'm sure it's the stress with Mavis doesn't help, but Jay has gotten old. I feel like I could throw a suit on Dave and maybe ask him to shave the beard, and he could fill in for Colbert next week, and you would be like, yeah, this makes sense. And I'm not 100% sure I could throw Jay Leno on the Tonight Show for a week in 2026. I don't say that with malice or anything. We're all getting older. For everybody else, the first thing I said to Mike before we hit record, I jumped on the camera, looked at myself, and said, "Oh my God, I'm getting bald," or whatever I said about my own hairline. So it's not a dig. It's just time passes. But
Yeah.
I I didn't think of Dave as somebody who's sort of almost 80.
Yeah, and for me, thinking about that, kind of watching him on stage, I was in the second row, and I, no offense to Zach, but I basically was watching Dave almost the entire time just to see mannerisms and things like that. You talk about when, he might have to turn it on for the fans or whatever. I think that similar to when, shortly after 9/11, within a couple of years after 9/11, Dave stopped going to rehearsals, and part of that was energy conservation. When he came out on stage, he was the Dave that the energy was super high. The way the show started was he did his own intro, and his intro was hilarious. He was off stage and he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Queen Elizabeth Theater." And then he starts talking about the curling scandal that had been happening at the Olympics with the Canadians with the double touch and things like that were happening.
You guys did not have a good week. I forgot. Why are you cheating at curling? What are you doing? And it was more than once, right?
The Swedes were not happy with the way that the Canadians curled, and it was oh man, and funny to hear because it had just, because we saw him on the Wednesday, I think it was the Monday where that all happened. So clearly he's clearly his introduction for himself is a living document because let's throw in this, let's throw in that. And he comes out on stage and he starts, and Walter Kim was there, and Walter is the guy who runs all of Dave's his curated content, his late night, his late show stuff, the YouTube channel, all of that stuff. That's Walter's world. Walter runs all of that. The Barbara Gaines show, he films that and edits and puts it all up. So Walter was there. And as Dave comes out on stage, he's sitting there talking about his history, and he would go through his history, and then Walter would put clips up. And so we got clips of Dave. By the way, a lot of people don't remember this or have noted this necessarily, but back in the day when Dave was at the radio station, I believe it was in Muncie. I don't know if it was at Muncie. I just like saying Muncie, but he was there, and it showed a picture of him, and he had this huge beard. And now it was a Hutterite beard. He had no mustache, but he had a big beard at that point. And it was neat to see that. So they would show pictures of him then. They showed as he was building his. They showed the clip with him and Bruno Gerussi, Canadian-owned beachcomber Bruno Gerussi. They showed clips of that. They showed the Mary Tyler Moore clip, the famous clip where Dave and Michael Keaton are doing the singing and dancing on stage. And it was fun. It looked like Walter was messing with them a little bit because the clip was on, and then Dave's like, "Okay, that's enough." And they let the clip keep going. And he's like, "Walter," no, like he's screaming to stop the clip. He let the clip go all the way. Showed clip of late night.
Let me just for my show's listeners, just to really quickly explain.
Yes, please. Sorry.
So after the Mary Tyler Moore show, Mary Tyler Moore had a variety show on CBS, and the cast did include Michael Keaton and a youngish David Letterman. And if you want to see Dave dressed like a nerd doing typical, I guess that's early 80s variety show, singing and dancing, picture the Brady Bunch Kids Variety Hour and throw David Letterman on that, and you're close enough.
Yes.
Sorry, I've interrupted again, Mike.
No, please do. I do that all the time. I assume people know what I'm talking about, which is rarely the case. And so he, went through his history, and hilarious as he did it. I mean, they brought up the Trump tweet, where, whatever happened to David Letterman, no talent, no this, all right. Like, he kind of wore it like a badge of honor. But then he started talking about how much he loves Canada. And I don't know, it was almost like if there was a theme of the show, it was acting as an emissary, to say, hey, we acknowledge some of the stuff that's being said in the greater narrative of the world right now and what's happening and the Canada-US tensions and things like that. And he really, really did a great job of playing on that, not in a way that the current late night talk shows do, not to create more polarization, not to, I mean, he poked fun at President Trump, of course, because of the tweets and some of the direct things or whatever, but he didn't really, it wasn't a bashing or anything like that. It was just, more of a recognition of what was going on. And hey, let's make this better. By the way, the ovation that Dave got, I really need to note that when he brought himself out, the place went nuts is not accurate. It was way more than that. And I'd never seen Dave in a space that big before. I've seen him at the Ricardo Montalban Theater, and another theater in LA. And then of course the Ed Sullivan Theater. Ed Sullivan Theater, 400 seats, 500 seats, that's the most. Montalban's less. Like the other ones are intimate, they're smaller. But this place, 3,000 seats, and the entire place erupted in a standing ovation that would shake the foundation. It was long enough that Dave got really uncomfortable. Okay, like it was a long thing. Then he went through what I just talked about. Roll it, Walter, and the video clips and whatnot. And then he brought Paul Shaffer out on stage, and everybody went crazy for Paul Shaffer, and almost as crazy for Paul as Dave. And Dave said, "Here, this is a song that I used to get Paul to play every once in a while on the show, and he goes, it's a song that I love." And we're going to sing it together right now. And a huge Canadian flag comes from the rafters down, and we sing "O Canada." And Paul leads us to sing "O Canada" with his beautiful Steinway & Sons grand piano that's on stage just off to the left of the chairs that Dave and Zach would occupy. So we sing "O Canada" together, and that was a lot of fun. So that was how the show started. And this is probably 20 minutes before Zach even comes out. So that alone, the prep for that, the writing of it, the rewriting, the revisions of it, that would have taken a lot of effort to do that wasn't necessary because the place sold out in 4 minutes. So they rose to the occasion to give us something that was unique. And this is all before Zach comes out. So it was a beautiful, beautiful precursor to what was then about to happen.
Take one more break and we'll come back and talk more with Mike Chisholm from the Letterman Podcast. My mind is now thinking more about this event. So let me break this apart several ways. Mm-hmm. We're just for laughs. We're going to throw a comedy festival. It's not our big one. Our big one's in Montreal. We have some international ones. This is a bit of a newer one. Let's book some comedians, okay? So-and-so's touring. We're tight with these agents. We're tight with these managers. These people are friends of the festival and often do the festivals. Let's get some local people in. And then somebody said, let's ask David Letterman. Like, that just seems odd. I'll continue. Mm-hmm. If you're David Letterman, okay, yeah, I'm reasonably retired-ish. If I need to scratch a creative itch, I'll just go on the Barbara Gaines show. If I want to comment on current events, I'll go on the Barbara Gaines show, or I could, I guess, just go on YouTube myself. I could give an interview with the New York Times if I feel like I need to be heard. If I need to perform, I can go to Los Angeles and the Netflix Comedy Festival, with whom I have a relationship. So why is David Letterman at JFL Vancouver? Even JFL Montreal would be a 1-hour flight in and out, and I'm back home for dinner. Why is David Letterman going to Vancouver and Paul Shaffer comes? That this is, I'm adding up 2 and 2 and I'm getting 17 here.
Well, and I mean, it's funny at 78 that this kind of a path might reveal itself. But first off, JFL Vancouver, I believe this is 10 years. Like I remember just before the pandemic, and I'm talking maybe weeks before the pandemic, in 2020, I went and saw Bill Burr for the Just for Laughs. So this is back in 2020. I saw Burr as one of the headliners. But I hear where you're coming from. Yeah, it's
and there was at some point, Just for Laughs teamed up with an existing Vancouver comedy festival. I believe the actual festival is longer than something titled JFL Vancouver, because I remember this being around when I was at Sirius, and some of my Sirius stories are 20 years old now. But I don't know, this is adding up to, as a one-off, Dave's in Vancouver and Paul shows up, and
Yeah.
okay, Paul's Canadian, fine. It just seems like something is afoot.
I think it's a blueprint, personally, and I don't necessarily have any information to back that up, other than to say, to me, where Dave has carved himself out, you know, they kind of positioned him that he was headlining the festival, which is kind of neat. And I believe, where are we here? I think tonight, Jerry Seinfeld finishes the festival at the same theater Dave was at. I believe that's tonight. I believe that's happening. So there's probably some sort of connection there as well, because I believe they have some common people in their administrative teams that might have maybe made that happen. So that's one way. You're going to get Seinfeld. Well, hey, what if we also brought Dave? That might be part of it. I'm not exactly certain about that. But the idea, though, to have a comedy festival that's all stand-ups is one thing. Okay, but what if we included performance art? What if we included some podcasts? What if we included, which they did at JFL Vancouver this year? And then also, here's a unique way. What if we brought Letterman in and he talked to Zach? Isn't necessarily known as a stand-up, but certainly a performance artist. What if David Letterman came in and had a conversation with one of the top stand-ups? He's been doing that for a few years here. He's been doing it on Netflix, but also on these little one-off shows for other festivals and things like that. To me, that's a bankable, different face or a different event to put into a festival. Some of my favorite bands, they don't really tour anymore, but they will go to all the different festivals in Europe and all the different big festivals and things like that. It's an easier road to travel. To me, if Dave did need to scratch this itch, which clearly he does because he loved it. So you could tell he loved being up there. He loved that moment. Just like he used to talk about, my whole day is a terrible day except for the hour between 5 and 6 o'clock. And that is my, the favorite part of my day. He got a chance to experience that there. I think the idea of him doing this at other festivals, or perhaps even going out and having an evening with, David Letterman and somebody in different cities, to me, that is something that he would have access to whenever he wanted to at this time in his life. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that he has that. Okay.
I'm adding up 2 and 2, and I'm getting 944. I want you to write this conspiracy theory down. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So you're David Letterman. Remember the Conan tour? Yes, of course you remember the Conan tour. We remember the Conan tour. You're David Letterman.
From TV, yes.
Dave does seem a little bothered by the news of the day more often. Like, he hid out for a while and he's a little commenty now. So let's put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
The Ed Sullivan Theater becomes vacant in June.
Yeah.
Okay. Just put that there. Maybe you go to Vancouver because it's a 3,000 seat theater. So it's, even if JFL overpays him, it's not a, oh my God, I can't turn this down. I'm playing Wembley Stadium type payday. It's a 3,000 seat theater. So even if you overpay the man, you still have to run a festival and it has to make sense. So it's not about the money. It's about the performance. And if you workshop a show at the Netflix festival in Los Angeles, you're being noticed. Maybe, perhaps, possibly, maybe, perhaps, we're looking at some sort of theater run involving Paul Shaffer, and there's going to be a theater available. And again, I added up 2 and 2 and just got 4,000, but let's just write that down, and maybe in August you and I can connect and be like, see, I almost had it right, except for the part with the da-da-da. Yeah.
Dave's former executive producer and one of my favorite people in the world, his name is Robert Morty, as he was known on the show. He came on my show, I don't know how long ago, 6 months maybe. And we talked about that. We talked about the Ed Sullivan Theater, and the idea was thrown out, Netflix should buy the theater.
Yeah, and right. I forgot to verbalize that as part of my conspiracy theory. Yes.
Yeah. Like, what if they did that? And what if there was an opportunity that once a month, once every 3 months, you think about Billy Joel, playing Madison Square Garden once a month, just to leave the house, go to MSG, play a show, go home. There you go. Pretty cut and dry, right? Imagine if they had that tool at their disposal where some of their performers could go and utilize that theater with its history, with now its technology. They upgraded the hell out of that place. And like a year ago or a year and a half ago, for the first time, the audio room, there's a guy by the name of Harvey Goldberg who is the maestro of the musical performance there, how they blend live and produced music and create this amazing opportunity for live performance for artists. I mean, they spent a lot of money on that thing to upgrade the recording studio they have there and the mixing studio they have there. A lot of money. So there's a ton of technology in that place as well. Imagine if they had that for when they have some of their featured comics to do specials and to be able to use it as a utility tool for what Netflix is trying to build. To me, that's it's a no-brainer. But again, I'm coming from a fan perspective saying that as well, right? Being excited about the idea. But
this all makes sense. You want to tell me Saturday, September, whatever, 10 p.m. live from the Ed Sullivan Theater. My next guest is Stephen Colbert, who we haven't heard from all summer. That's Netflix playbook. Again, I'm deep in the weeds, but why would David Letterman go to Vancouver? Why? Why?
I know.
Vancouver's lovely, but he's David Letterman. Why?
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. There's some stuff I'll tell you offline as well that parts of this that I can't say here, but I do not believe this is a one-off. And I'll say that. And I'm pretty sure if it's not a one-off, there are going to be other places that have the opportunity to experience what I got to experience last Wednesday. And I certainly hope that is the case. And anybody out there who does enjoy David Letterman, if you have the chance to go see him, it is worth it. It will be money well spent. Highly recommend it. So yeah.
Which Letterman am I getting? Am I getting Watermelon Letterman? Am I getting throwing cards? Am I getting Elder Statesman Dave? Or is it depend on the minute? What Dave am I getting?
I think it depends on the guest. I think the Dave that came out and you know, the pre-show Dave, you're getting somebody who really cares about what you're going to see to make you laugh, to enjoy. Is he going to throw macaroni and cheese in the audience like the Bare Naked Ladies do sometimes when they perform in Canada? No, not necessarily. I don't think that you're going to see that zany part. I think you'll see reference to it, perhaps. But then it depends on the guest. And the guest that we had here was Zach Galifianakis. And let me tell you, Johnny, there were a couple of moments there that were Andy Kaufman. There was an Andy Kaufman moment during this show. And now it's not watermelons being thrown off a tower, but it was that same manipulation of feelings that isn't just, we're going to make you laugh. Now we might touch you a little bit, then we're going to make you laugh and make you laugh more. No, it was more than that. So I would say the answer to that question is it depends on the guest, because I think Dave can, as in my opinion, the greatest broadcaster of all time, Dave can be Barbara Walters and ask the tough questions and or not even tough questions, but maybe the heartfelt questions and go for a narrative. He's got that skill, but he's also got the skill where he can shoot the bull about comedy, where comedy comes from, where these premises come from, and like I saw him do with Nate Bargatze a few years ago, or he can do what he did with Zach, which is yes, ask about some of the things going on with Zach. Why was Zach chosen? He lives, in Vancouver now, or just off Vancouver, on one of the islands out there, with his Canadian wife. And has kind of, he talked about how he did not want to be in LA anymore. He does not like the way technology is driving things. He does not like the way show business is, and wanted to get away from that. Despite still wanting to be a performer, he just couldn't live in it anymore. And now we're all in the audience going, oh my goodness. And he starts to, articulate on some very, very serious things, but then would go on a dime to zany, and then on another dime to something completely Andy Kaufman-esque. So really, I think to answer your question is it depends.
Okay. I've got a quick Kaufman story that I have to get out of my system.
Please.
The New York Comedy Festival had started the Kaufman Awards, and Kristen Schaal had won it, and that's how I got to know Kristen a little bit. So I got to know Michael Kaufman, Andy's brother, and we started to talk about what we could do to, I don't know, honor, whatever term you want to use, Andy Kaufman. At Sirius, we used to have these things called town halls where you would book a celebrity and have some super fans come up. So David Letterman's coming up, and 12 people like you would kill to be in that room, and we would broadcast these things. So Michael Kaufman agreed we would do Andy Kaufman Town Hall. He was totally in on this. I couldn't convince my boss that this was a great idea, and I'm sad we didn't do this. So the idea was we were going to announce, the Kaufman estate was willing to announce that on, whatever day, Andy Kaufman Town Hall was going to happen and Andy was going to come. And then we were going to have the event and invite people up. And Andy would run late and continue to run late and continue to run late, et cetera, et cetera. And we were going to have Kristen Shaw kill time for us. And we never really got to how that would all resolve itself. But he was willing to put out a press release with a quote from Andy, et cetera. And this would have been amazing. God. But the other thing, as I'm sitting there having lunch with him, since he's Andy's brother and many years have gone by, I start going down in my brain. I'm like, wait. Maybe this is Andy Kaufman and he's doing a bit to me. Maybe there is no Michael and I'm in my own head getting crazy with this thing, but we never actually did it. Around that same time, I got to know Bob Zmuda a little bit, who was in the Kaufman cycles. And some people think
dreamt of talking to that dude. Yeah.
Some people think Bob would sometimes play the role of Tony Clifton. But Zmuda was kind enough to book Tony Clifton to come up to Sirius the next day. And Mr. Clifton showed up in the lobby and didn't have any ID that said Tony Clifton. So security would not let Tony Clifton in the building. And Tony Clifton, being Tony, threw a tantrum and stormed off and never came in. And then Bob called me later and told me what happened and how come Clifton had never shown up. Fun stuff.
Tony Clifton is one of my dream guests for the Letterman podcast. He would be the ultimate, because I love featuring people who have been on the show, on our show, and I hope that grows into that more. Tony Clifton has always been, he's in my top 5 guests to be on the Letterman podcast for reasons just like that. The idea that he's down in the lobby and can't get up is just hysterical to me, and I feel bad for whoever, not just the security guards, because that's what they're meant to do, but the people who are behind, like the counter, the administration people. That day, I feel so bad for them. They had no idea what was coming for them that day that they came to work. That is just a beautiful, beautiful story. I love that.
So let me just, for again my listeners who may be less hip to this. So back in the day, Andy Kaufman, there were people who believed that sometimes Andy Kaufman would perform a character known as Tony Clifton, who was this big, loud guy who thought he had invented show business. Now, of course, Andy Kaufman is not Tony Clifton. Tony Clifton is a completely distinct, separate person. But talk shows would book Tony Clifton thinking they had booked Andy Kaufman, but of course Andy Kaufman and Tony Clifton are two different people, so they would have Tony Clifton on the show thinking they booked Kaufman. However, there are some who believe that sometimes they would book Tony Clifton and Bob Zmuda would dress up as Tony Clifton, and the talk show would think they had booked Andy Kaufman, but they had actually booked Bob Zmuda pretending to be Tony Clifton. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, know what I mean, say no more. Love it.
So great. I love that stuff. And Zach did one of these to Dave, and I want to, like, I don't like revealing bits, right? I don't ever want to do that. Sure. You got me credentialed to go see a couple of comics at JFL outside of Dave. Red Richardson comes to mind. I want to celebrate like 3 of the bits that he did there. There was a 9/11 bit, there was a canceling bit, and there was something else. I want to celebrate them and articulate them with people, but he is clearly working on them for another special. So I'm not going to go into how he made it clever and even innocent, even though he did. This one, however, I believe is a one-off. And I think that I'm okay to talk about what Zach did on stage here because there's a little bit of a coda to it afterwards that I just adore. One of the things that famously about Dave out there is that he doesn't like to be surprised. Early on, they had to create in Dave's run. They had to create a sort of a culture where instead of surprising Dave with something and enjoying his wit, his off the cuff wit, which is second to none, you let Dave in on it, but it's okay because he knows he'll react to it the way that he would have if he were surprised. He's got the ability to do that because he just gets irked being surprised. Well, I believe Zach did that to Dave on stage. And I don't believe that he was ready for it. So they were going about having a lovely conversation about life and what they, Zach was amazing. He at one point hands $100 bill to somebody in the audience, and it's a real one because he handed it to the guy right in front of me. He was messing with the audience, talking about how he married a Canadian girl. We all clapped. And then Zach's like looks at all of us and he goes, "Yeah, but she's from Calgary." And the entire audience turned on him for a second because the rivalry between the Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames. And it was just like playing with us, right? He called the leader of the Conservative Party here in Canada, his name's Pierre Poilievre. He called him Pierre Poutine. Just did a great job showing us who he was. They were going back and forth. And then they started settling down and getting serious a little bit. And they started talking about their personal lives, and it came out. Does your wife like when you do you do bits in regular life, like with servers at a restaurant or people or whatever? Oh yeah. Does your wife like that? No, my wife thinks I'm very unfunny. Oh yeah, mine too. Both of them going on about how they have these goofy personalities and how their wives do not think that they are funny. They do not like when they do bits. And Zach starts telling a story about his mom, and he starts saying, growing up, it was like that. And Dave's like, yes, for me as well. Kind of the round peg in a square hole kind of scenario. And Zach was talking about how he would love to make his mom laugh. And she had this guffaw, like it was an involuntary kind of a thing that would happen when he said the right thing and the right combination of things. But the problem is most of the time it would be inappropriate. And so Zach got this weird back and forth because he would get the guffaw, but then he would get in trouble. And it was just like, okay, good, but then bad. And that happened a lot. And he brought up a couple stories about that. And then he told one, and it was just so powerful. Like he was talking about how he got the guffaw, and he goes, and this one here, and I got the guffaw from my mom. And he stops, and he goes, and just I just need, and Johnny, I swear to God, a tear is coming out of his eye. Like I'm there, I'm watching, and it's happening, and I'm looking at Dave. And Dave's entire energy changed and shifted and became extremely uncomfortable, like extremely, because Zach Galifianakis is crying on stage right now. And Dave was unprepared. It was just a moment talking about comedy, and suddenly, and he like literally, I'm watching the tear fall down his face. And Dave, even though he's got the lapel mic on, he says very softly, "Oh, this is real." Like he just really, really, really softly. And Zach's like, "I'm so sorry. I just lost my mom last month." And the entire audience just, all the breath went out of the room because it was just so, and then the empathy for him was just, you could feel the empathy for him. And it was just, and Dave was like, and he didn't know. He talked about how he watched the entire run of Between Two Friends, and he watched The Hangover, and he watched some of these other things. And it was unprepared to know that Zach just lost his mom. And then Zach said a couple more things, and it was like, and he goes, "I was just kidding. I didn't really lose my mom last month." The entire audience was like, "What?" Dave included. And then a few sentences later, he said, "Oh, no, really. No, my mom really is dead." And we were all just not knowing what to do with that. And Dave kept referring. This is where I think it wasn't scripted. I'm 99% it wasn't scripted. Dave wasn't in on it because he kept coming back to it. And when he came back to it, he was doing it almost as Grumpy Dave. "Oh yeah, it's as good. It's every bit as good as a dead mom bit." He would say things like, and he called it back maybe 2 or 3 times. So anyway, the coda to that story is apparently after the show, Dave and his team went out for dinner, not with Zach, but Dave and his team went out for dinner. And for a good portion of that dinner, they were trying to figure out if Zach Galifianakis' mom is dead or alive or not. And that to me was just Lovely. And I'm not the first person to put that out there. The Georgia Straight put it out there. I feel okay. The Georgia Strait's like an Indie Vancouver publication or newspaper. So they put it out there. So I don't feel like I'm wrecking anything by putting it out there. It was a phenomenal moment to be a part of. And if Zach actually got one over on Dave, good for him. And if he didn't, and Dave was in on it, like he was when Jerry Lawler slapped Andy Kaufman back in the day on the show, Dave was in on that. Then even more power to Dave, because he fooled everybody, making us think that he didn't know about it. So that encapsulates the show really at the end of the day, without me destroying any of the other stuff that they said. That was my favorite moment of the show. It was just such a lovely experience, John. I can't even tell you. It was just such a lovely experience.
I'm so glad you got to meet him and you got to see a show, which is great as well.
And a phenomenal show. Like, there wasn't anybody who left there wishing that they didn't come. The goodwill, it was just the energy afterwards as people were leaving. It was just it was a lovely, lovely experience. And I just highly recommend it. If you're able to see Dave live, go see him. If you have any affection for him whatsoever, you will regret not seeing him in years to come. When the inevitable that happens to all of us happens. Sure. If you have the opportunity to see him, go see him.
What did Shaffer do at the show?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this is the way to finish the show. And then I've got 6 minutes and then I've got a bolt. So this is a perfect way. Thank you very, very much for saying that. Oh my gosh. Leading everybody in O Canada at the beginning. But then at the end, after they finished all of the footage, they had a Zach, because the big screen behind them. So they're showing clips of Between Two Ferns. They're showing clips of The Hangover. They're showing clips and talking about some of these things. Dave says, I have a wonderful way to end the show. And he dedicates it to Zach. And Paul comes out and he starts playing on the piano and he plays It's Raining Men. and Zach is killing himself laughing. Like this is what like it almost felt like it was a bit of a surprise to Zach as to how they were going to finish the show. And Paul sings It's Raining Men as soon as the show, and it's a very high energy song. And so we're all, Paul, of course, a writer of that in the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame for that song alone, I believe. And so that's how they finished the show, which I thought was spectacular. It was quirky. And but at the same time, high energy and fun, and people were singing along with it. And then they got up and they thanked everybody, and they all kind of walked off stage, and it was it was lovely.
Awesome, congrats.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was fantastic. And I just got to say, I adore our friendship. I adore our kinship. I love your show. I love this show so much, and I can't thank you enough for reaching out to them and having them kind of take a chance on me to cover a couple of the other stand-ups that were there. It was really, really fun to do that. So Johnny, thank you so much for giving me that opportunity to go out and do that as well. That was more trimmings on a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience.
No, thanks for going. And you're helping me. And also I think it's good for the listeners to hear you reacting to something I say all the time, that when you go see a festival, go see the smaller shows. And that's where the magic is. And you were in small rooms and you clearly enjoyed it. So that made me happy to see that you weren't like, what did he send me to? And you saw the magic of comedy festivals.
Yes, sir. And the difference, seeing when you're in a small room for an open mic and you're seeing people kind of stumble their way forward, that's one thing. When you're in a small room for to see people who are not open micers, they've clearly established who they are, their voice, their personality, their character, if you want to look at it that way. And then you see them play to a small room. It's the same thing as watching your favorite seasoned band. You watch Pearl Jam play to a room of 400 people. That's a very special thing. Seeing Red Richardson, for example, he sold the room out, but it was 130 people as a sellout. Phenomenal and intimate and beautiful. And Catherine Blanford, same room, but only 32 seats sold. And her playing with that the way that she did, because she isn't just an open micer that's, right. It's another room of 32 people. No, she is sharp as a tack, and she gets a chance to go play a small room. And boy, did she have fun with it. So yeah, those were both two very, very good shows.
Yeah, I'm telling my listeners, Catherine Blanford, learn that name. That's definitely somebody to keep. I haven't seen Red, so I'll take your word for it. But Catherine, I've seen, and that's somebody to keep an eye on. All right, I'm going to go shovel, and you probably have a job or something, so I'll let you go. and we'll talk some more.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. I love your friendship. I love your show. And thank you for being you, buddy.
Back at you.
All right. Talk to you soon.